Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, is my good friend and for once well-rested co-host, Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Dude, I'm just glad to have a night off where I can watch the Pirates and no extracurricular activities. Man,
Yeah,
life gets busy, dude.
dude, it's funny because much like I raised children and I ran them around. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's a labor of love. You enjoy doing it and everything. There are nights when you kick back and you finally get to taste that sweet, sweet beer touch your lips, at the end of a Thursday night or something, and you just look up at yourself and go, I do this schedule to myself.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that is pain, man. That's pain to have that conversation with yourself.
It is. And you know what? What I'm realizing is this is just the start of it for me. Obviously, I have a younger one
Yeah.
and he's getting into all kinds of stuff. So, man, I just gotta learn to live with it. I'm gonna miss some things here and there.
Let's see. Hey, before we get started, let's see what John Gorman says. He says, "What's up, guys? It's 9:21, and I'm still enjoying watching the Pirates. You know what, man? You know what? Underrated statement, I would say, because it still has been interesting, entertaining, competitive, even dare I say, good baseball since the All Star break. And it kind of doesn't make any sense, Jim. But I don't want to ask too many questions because whoever's done the black magic in the locker room, I'm going to just let it go for making the pitching staff work out.
Yeah, I tend to agree with John right now though, like I'm still interested. I mean, there's plenty to talk about and look at. So this is getting to be a super important part of this whole process we've been sitting watching.
Hey, Dougie Fresh is with us. Dougie, how you doing? Ryan Little has joined the show. How you doing, brother? All right, so tonight we're going to talk about some cool stuff, Jim. We actually sat back and planned this show a little bit. I know, everybody.
Yeah,
It's not
can you
normal.
believe it?
We we actually sat back and really planned what we wanted to talk about tonight. So here's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with talking about the playoff picture, especially the NL wild card, because the Pirates really are in a cool position here, I think, for this young team. They get to finish the season facing three teams actively battling for the last wild card spot. I think it's a pretty cool path, man. And that, they got punched in the mouth by the Cubbies. They punched the Cubbies back in the mouth last night. The deciding game of the series is tonight. That's going to be interesting. I can't wait to watch it. Um, then they go right to Cincinnati and Miami. How the Pirates finish this season affects three, if not four, other teams. It's kind of fun, man. I wish they were involved in it more, but I'll take what I can get.
Well, I mean, it's a nice little test run right now because these teams are playing for something. And I think you see that in the ballpark when you're playing these teams. And hopefully, you get a little sniff of that yourself and you lock in a little bit more and you want to play good baseball and you want to affect some things. So for younger players, I think this is a very important little stretch.
Right. I mean, like we're watching, I think, some very interesting things take place. Like Josh Palacios with his power has started to creep himself into the conversation of like, maybe we kind of have to think about this guy a little bit more going into next year. We don't want him to be leaned on, Jim, but maybe he's more than okay as a bench guy, really. Those home run totals are kind of something.
I mean, look, there's a, and it's tough because you don't know how things carry over year to year for certain guys, right? I don't know what this looks like next year if he's got to be in the same kind of role. I will give him this. He's a high energy guy. He seems to come up big in big spots. Is that repeatable next year?
It's funny
How
you say that. Here's a comment from Ryan. Uh, he's become a pretty big Josh Palacios fan. Might be in the minority, but love his passion. I think that's a great way to look at it too, because I think that passion aspect is something that a lot of guys are a little afraid to turn the faucet on with,
Hmm.
but he's not. So and teams need that emotional leader, that whether he's an important piece or not.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly put himself in the discussion of being someone you need to keep around in some form or fashion. It's just, trying to decide what that is still the part that is yet to be decided, I think.
Right. So you got the Cubs, the Marlins, and Cincinnati all separated by one game. Cubs are in the playoffs technically if it were to end right this second. Miami is a half game out, Cincy is one game out. Out of those three, you have to figure that last spot's probably going to come, unless San Francisco goes on a mighty run and those other teams fall off the face of the earth, right? I suppose San Diego, you have to pretend, is still in it too.
Where's
But it seems
Arizona
to
in all
me
this? Where's
Arizona
Arizona?
is the second wild card, 1.5 games up
Okay.
on the Cubbies,
Okay.
and Philadelphia is firmly in the first wild card, up 4 games on Arizona.
Hmm.
So I think those first two spots are probably pretty close to safe. But Chicago, Miami, and Cincinnati are going to fight it out. And it's really cool the Pirates are involved in that in some weird way. It's obviously didn't know what was going to happen when you set the schedule. But the Pirates aren't shrinking violets here. They're going after these guys. I think they had a score to settle with the Cubs, and it was good to see them take one at least. I'd like to see them take another one here and really further cement that. You have one of your supposed better pitchers that's for sure coming back pitching, Oviedo, right?
Right.
So you'd like to see that. The Miami series perplexes me because I haven't been impressed by Miami all year, but they hang in there. And Cincinnati, I said, was going to fall back a long time ago, back when they were first in the division. And they've kind of fallen back, but it's been a lot slower than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? How's it going to shake out?
Well, I just did a little peek too. I wanted to see Arizona's been so up and down.
Hmm.
They've seemed to have rescued things. They finish with, let's see, they've got 3 games at the Yankees, 3 at Chicago White Sox, and then 3 at home against the Astros.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to see if it was setting up one way or the other for them, because that would be really wild if they stumble down the stretch. Then that makes it very, very interesting. I still think it's the Cubs, Gary, at this point. Uh, that's where I'm leaning to. What do you think about what now that we're getting up on this for the first time, this expanded playoff format?
Yeah.
Where are you with it?
Uh, I mean, I think I'll probably have a different take on this next year because I think the Pirates might well need it. Um, it's hard for me, Jim, because my childhood calls all the way back to remembering when you had to win one big ass division with
Hmm.
like 6 other teams. And hey, if the Mets were going to be good for half a decade, the Mets were going to be good for half a decade. That's who you were going to have to beat. And so for me now, it's turning into hockey almost, where there's maybe a team or two too many getting in.
Right.
But it's a nice bone to teams that I think will struggle to win divisions outright in certain places. So I don't hate it. I
Yeah.
just think it does water things down a bit.
When they did all this at the beginning, I of course was more salty about it than liked it. I've come around on it a little bit. One, I just see it as, quite frankly, for some teams, it's just flat out more of a chance to at least be in the discussion. If you're not going to fix what's really wrong, and they
Yeah.
don't seem intent on doing that, then I guess I'll take it. Getting rid of that one game wild card game, I think, was really a good idea. It just, obviously, for Pirate fans, we don't like it, but I think just in general, if you're a baseball fan, you can kind of see that that's not very indicative of anything to let it come down to just this one game winner take all scenario.
Right.
Yeah.
So all in
So
all, I'm okay with it, and I just think it's an interesting finish to the season. So I guess I have to say they succeeded in that regard. To
yeah.
have this many teams still kind of involved, it's interesting at the very least.
And truth be told, it'll probably help the Pirates. So I guess if we're looking for some assistance from Major League Baseball, this is how we're going to have to get it.
Truth. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about the Pirates 2023 Rookie of the Year. Because we're not going
Ooh.
to learn anything in, 7 games that we don't
Nope.
already know?
Nope. We're putting in those Heisman ballots early.
Right, brother.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Jim and Gary with you, and we're going to do the Rookie of the Year, the Pirates Rookie of the Year this year. And Jim, it's a lot more interesting than it usually is, first of all, because when you have a team that goes full youth movement, it is awesome to see them call up that many kids. But then they start stumbling over each other for opportunity, and like, who do you really consider like the best? Is it who you're most excited about? Is it who performed the best?
Yeah, but we're doing performance.
Yeah, to
To
me,
make
it's
it
about
clear.
performance. I think that's where I go, and I can go first if you'd like on this one. Or
Yeah,
you
dude.
may.
I
Sure.
I want you to start it off. So
All right, mine might surprise you. We'll see. I'm going to go with Carmen Mlodzinski. His 1.99 ERA in 30 games, just about a strikeout per inning. Whips 1.200. He's been consistent, and he's been consistently rising, meaning I think he has consistently improved as the season has gone on, and he's really the most successful number one pick they've called up in quite some time.
don't do that when I'm drinking.
So Carmen Mlodzinski is my pick.
Listen, he
And
was.
looks like Canyon agrees with me here.
All right, he's a stud. He's been a stud. I will agree with that. Yeah, I mean, he's somebody that I think like you can really see him being a really good piece right now. I mean, there's really been, Doug, 30 games. You're right. It's hard to believe, but he's actually looked pretty much in command when he's out there. And this is a guy obviously getting his first taste. So I can't disagree with it. He was on my short list, Gary. I will say that I wish this was easier. I will say that I wish that we were sitting here and we were talking about Henry Davis and just, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
That's a little disappointing. But that being said, I'm going to go with Jose Hernandez.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is maybe I can say a little bit more of most valuable rookie. Can I merge that a little bit? Because I think he really, at a time when they were scrambling, he was ready to go. And as a Rule 5 guy, and if you look, Gary, at his numbers, yeah, he's had a couple appearances in there where it's really affected his ERA.
Yeah, you can tell he's really fallen towards the end of the season too.
Yeah,
like,
I think you're
tired.
seeing that. Right. But you know what? 45 appearances. He is, let's see.
Can't call that hiding a roll 5.
No, and they really had to have it. And so you're still looking at a guy with a 1.295 width.
Not bad.
He is striking out hitters. He's got 58 in 46 innings.
Nice.
He's not walking guys. He's got 19 walks. He's up to, I think, 45 appearances on the year. So it's understandable that he might be wearing down a little bit at the
Sure.
end of the year. I mean, you are talking about a guy that was thrown into it, and we've seen Rule 5 guys just absolutely implode. They're just not ready for that. 11.3 strikeouts per 9 innings. So
he made them throw him too, because
yeah,
I mean he really in spring kind of looked like a man amongst boys, didn't he?
mhm.
In-
and
in certain-
and we picked him out before the year started. I want to say too. We both
I
liked
mean,
him.
more importantly, Ben Cherington picked him out. That's a heck of a find in a roll 5, man. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm excited to see what he can do next year. And I can honestly say, I think if this were next year, he'd have been sent down here because he's tired. And they're kind of just holding him at this point to fulfill the obligation, which should also tell you how important they think he is next year.
Yeah.
That's a good call, man. I can't argue with that either.
Yeah, that ERA is up in the 4s now, but it's been a couple appearances that have gotten it to that point. For the most part, it's been in the 3s.
Right. I'm not
So,
married to ERA.
Me neither. I think the underlying stuff looks pretty good.
I think watching the whole season, I'd have to say I have more good impressions of Hernandez than I do bad ones. So I'd have to agree with you. He's up there.
Yeah.
I guess for me, for Majinski as a rookie,
Mhm.
when I see him come in, I don't even have like a bit of doubt that he's going to have something that night. He may not have the same pitches every night, but he's got something every night.
Right.
You know, and he can get you out in so many different ways. I just think that's dangerous. I actually think he could be a closer if they really, really wanted to. And I almost would like to see it. I think he's dominant. I love his mix.
You know what? These are the types of guys you should be having coming up in your system. If you claim to have a strong system, and you should have guys like that knocking on the door saying, "Hey, I'm here too, you know, if you need that." And I could probably fill in that role because I mean, let's be honest, you know, you don't know how long David Bednar is going to be what he is. He's gone through stretches where he does wear down.
Right. Like Douglas here says the one roll 5 success since 2020. Yeah, Doug, they don't happen a lot. Like in the league.
Yeah.
Really. Akil Baddoo, I can think of recently, was a guy that came about that way, but it just does not happen too frequently.
Right.
That they really, really step in and do much of anything. Certainly don't go into like the season assuming you're going to use a roll 5 guy 45 times. I just don't believe that.
Now, looking at Majinski, the one thing I do see is his walks. Probably needs to work on those a little. 15 walks, 31 innings. But his stuff is so good that I think sometimes he misses because his stuff's too good. You know, like, so.
Here,
Good
let's
pick.
further the conversation with Ryan here. He says, who's your top non-pitcher surprise? He'd have to go with Liover Peguero. He wasn't a name he expected to make any impact. Who would you pick, sir?
I honestly gave Peguero some consideration for this award.
Yeah, I just didn't think he was up here long enough for me. But
Right. But what I will say is, though, what you saw with him is once he started getting playing time and playing consistently in the field,
Yeah.
things started to stabilize a little bit. And so, yeah, I think if he would have had a little bit more time, we might be having a different conversation. I think he really stabilized some things.
Yeah. I've liked Piguero. I think he's done better in the field than I think was advertised, and better than I've seen. I'm not going to say that I eagle eye watch these prospects like game in and game out like some of these guys do, but I watch enough that that you kind of get the idea whether a guy's a good fielder or not. I'm not saying I don't miss any boneheaded moves he makes or whatever, but you
Yeah.
can tell if a guy's got it. I honestly thought that he probably was a little too erratic. I haven't seen that up here.
No, that's
So
what I thought you'd see. I thought you'd see a
maybe
little
he's
bit.
been coached out of it up here. I mean, like I'm not trying to play. Like maybe they have gotten to him somehow and really helped him improve, because I haven't seen sign one of that sort of thing.
Well, from everything I've read about him, it seems like he's a guy that's taking it very seriously and is locked in on getting to be a better baseball player. I think the biggest issue still with Piguero is, and it's weighing some of his production down, is 289 on base percentage. That yes, he's got some power and he's driving in some runs, but it's really, really hurting him in his overall production standpoint is just that on base percentage. Hopefully, at least get it into the 315, 320 range, and I'll feel a lot better.
I think part of the reason that we're excited about him is because he's hitting those home runs and he's reaching out and poking stuff like that. And unfortunately, to fix that on base percentage thing, exactly what they're going to do with him.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that kind of scares me about Piguero, because I know he's yet to go through some of the adjustments that I know they're going to want to make with them. And it's easy for us to say, "Oh, Andy Haynes." You know our feelings on him, but even Jim, you brought up that issue now. I mean, like, that now. That's an on base percentage that can't fly. At least not to much fanfare anyway.
Yeah.
If you want to be a starter, you got to do better than that.
Right. Yeah, he's got to make a bit of a jump there, and he's young. So again, I think the hope is that he will, but it's a tough thing for guys to learn how to take pitches and walks without being to the detriment of everything else. So
I guess if I had to pick another position player, I'd probably go with Endy. If only because I think on the defensive side of things, he has more than adjusted to the league, and he's done a very good job of pulling himself into being an everyday catcher. You can tell he's wearing down now towards the end of the season. He's tired. This is the first time he's played this much behind the plate in a season. So, you can see it kind of like eating at him now a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think just the off season, let him come back in and refocus on his offense. I think it's really going to help Endy Rodriguez next year. I couldn't make him Rookie of the Year because the bat would have needed to make the trip from Indy with him, and it didn't.
Yeah.
That said, it didn't make the trip from AA to Indy either. That took him a while to marry the two sides of life. So we'll see how that goes, man.
Yeah, I think the fact that Endy has shown the ability, talk about this all the time, Gary, is like the ability to adjust. And that's what has to keep happening when you make this final leap. But you need to show that you can do it. You've done it. And so, like, as long as you see that, then you have some hope that it will continue, at least to an extent. I think Endy will be fine. I really do.
Oh, I agree. I think he's really got a good shot, man. And then the other honorable mention, Ji-hwan Bae. I truly think that Ji-hwan Bae came up here after 2 years of being told, like, we want you to hit for more power, we want you to hit for more power, we want you to hit for more power. He came up here and he tried to hit for more power, got hurt. Since he's come back up, he's hitting more like the G1 Bay that I remember seeing coming up, through Double A and whatnot. He's willing to hit the ball the other way. He's willing to use his speed to the opposite field. He's bunting. He's slapping baseballs to right field, left field, wherever, or up the middle. Consistent line drive hitter. That's what G1 Bay does when he's going. I still think they need to work on somehow getting him to be a little bit better at jumps on the base pass to make his speed count, for stealing bases a little bit more. But it's going to be real hard to push G1 Bay off this roster. I just think there's been too much good this year.
Yeah, he's funny because I do agree with you on that point. I do think he's going to be in the mix just simply because of positionally what he's going to offer them next year. And this is something we're going to get into in this next segment about things we want or things we think they should do to address things and why and the thinking behind it.
We should do that, man, because I think it's going to take us quite some time. So we should take a break. But before we do, I just want to make some comments here about social media because I think some of this stuff, I'm already getting tired of it. We haven't even gotten to the off season yet. Everybody and their mother knows they need a first baseman and a couple starting pitchers. You're not breaking news by telling me that they need a couple starting pitchers and a first baseman. You're not breaking news by telling me that Bob Nutting has traditionally been cheap. You're not breaking news by telling me you don't think that he's going to do it. I don't care if you think that he will or not. I don't care if I think he will or not.
Yeah,
you have to understand. We're going to say what we think they should do. I don't care if he would or not. So spare me the comments about he won't. I don't care.
Yeah.
I just don't. If he doesn't, they've done wrong.
It all comes down to we're going to talk about what we want them to do, what they should do. If you're in a place where they're not going to, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what is needed, what is necessary, what is something that might be a viable solution.
Yeah, I just think when ownership, or I guess the GM, comes out and the coach and they directly say next year we're targeting the playoffs. Well, Jim, I think you and I have been watching baseball for a long time. I think we can look at this team and we can both make educated guesses on what exactly it would take to get to that point. Right?
Sure.
So that's what we're going to do in this next segment. So buckle up because we're coming with specifics and this is going to be a lot of fun.
And I want to hear, and if people have ideas, let us know. Maybe we've missed something.
Yep. You tell us who you think we should get.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, this is back to the Pirates Fan Forum, and it's time for Jim and I to have some fun. We actually spent time researching and stuff, so it's time for us to put out our findings. So, Jim, our homework assignment was basically the Pirates say they're going to go to the playoffs. We know this team as currently constructed, even assuming some player development happens over the offseason, even assuming Oneil Cruz comes back. And I think you and I should also throw in Andrew McCutchen as a given. We'll go ahead and give you a free agent that Andrew McCutchen's coming back, and we won't care how much for. $4 million, $6 million, whatever, somewhere in between there. Andrew McCutchen will probably come back. So all that being a given, our homework assignment was we're each going to pick 3 things we think this team needs to do aside from firing the coach. Spare me that comment too, because my goodness, it ain't happening, people. Like, let's
I mean, we're talking about things as they stand right now.
yes.
So
3 players, 3 acquisitions that you think would guarantee a wild card showing next year. Okay, and I guess it's fair for us to look at the remaining schedule. They have a few games left and everything. Good chance they finish maybe 8, 9 games under 500. They're not out of the realm of possibility for reaching this wild card next year.
well, if they wouldn't have gotten manhandled by the Cubs this year, I mean, even if you can split it to, I think they played 12 games, even if you go 5-7 in those games, take a look at the record. I know you can't do that. I'm just saying, like, it's been somebody right in the division that you could point to if you just played a little better.
Right.
So
Hey, and rules for our little game here. If either of us have a repeat, like if I name a name and you have it on your list too, we'll just both of us take turns talking about what we think we like about that player and what they solve and all that jazz right then and there, okay?
Yep.
In other words, we won't have to make sure there's 6 total if it doesn't happen that way.
right.
We
No,
tend
because
to
I
think
don't, because
very similarly.
we don't know what we have no idea what we're gonna say.
All right, you want to start or you want me
We
to?
never do.
You want to start or you want me to?
I'll start, and I'm gonna go in order of less sexy to most sexy. Okay.
Sure.
And if there's one thing we bring on this show is less sexy. So let's start
Dude,
there.
I just got an email from the Braille school about that the other day.
Oh, really? Well, okay. So here's the thing. You know, when you really sit down and look at this, and I went with total free agent here
Sure.
for the most part because it just so hard. I think that their payroll is going to be as such that they could do this, and so I'm going to go first base. I'm not super pumped about it, but this is the route I would go, and this is my line of thinking, is that it would be a platoon situation with Connor Joe. I would get Brandon Belt. He's my
well,
first
ding,
guy.
ding, ding. There's our first.
Oh, damn it.
Our first
Well,
overlap.
the problem is, Gary, is like it is a position where I think if you put Brandon Belt with his lefty bat, and you can, he's not a guy that's going to be, he's 35, but he's lefty. He's still got a, let's see. I mean, he's still got this year a 369 on base percentage. He can play the position. You let him and Joe do their thing. I don't think he costs a ton, and to me, he's got more juice left in him than Carlos Santana.
I mean, I like Brandon Belt for a lot of the same reasons. You already said it. 35 years old, a little younger than Carlos Santana. Probably 9 to 10 million. I think you could probably have him for. Jim, I'd probably go 2 years here, or at least an option year. I want to solve this situation for a second here. I don't want to keep bouncing every single year. And doing something like that, it brings this room a multiple time World Series champion. You know?
Right.
In a little under 400 plate appearances this year, he's got 16 home runs. That's not horrible. 250 average, not the greatest. OPS 839. He's perennially a top defender at his position.
Mm-hmm.
His swing at PNC Park could be iconic looking, brother.
Yeah.
And highly effective. He's finally, you know, he's been a veteran on a young team that breaks through in the past. And I also think it leaves room for an apprentice type spot over there at first base. Like, I mean, you said Connor Joe. I would think this would be a good opportunity for Triolo to get some at bats too, because I think he's going to be roving around second base, third base, first base. I think is going to be in play for him as well. And this isn't a guy that's going to play 150 games at this point. So
No.
Brandon Belt would be my choice of all the free agent first basemen.
Yeah. Honestly, if you look around at what you could get, he's probably the best of. Yeah,
Tim's
that's
right
why.
here.
That's
Belt as
why.
a 1-year deal is a good idea, but he probably will be in high demand. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's why I think you might want to go 2 years and then throw an option year in there too. Like I think as the Pirates are sitting here, if you just think you're going to say, "Hey, you want to come here and play," and I think it's safe to do that with a guy like that. He's 35 and still really productive.
Yeah.
But Gary, to your point, this is a guy in the last 3 years, 97 games, 78 games, 97 games. So you're hoping to maybe get 90, 100 games out of him. Let him get his rest. Have someone you feel you can platoon with him, and I still think you've got a pretty productive guy.
All right, I like it, brother. I do. I really do. All right, here's my first one here. Michael Lorenzen. Look, he hasn't had a tremendous career. Boy, they're power washing the windows outside my apartment or my room right now. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
I can't hear it, so
good. He hasn't had a tremendous
I'm sure
career,
it's not distracting at all.
but he's 31 years old. Fills a very specific role for me. I mean, I'll start here. I would sign him to like a 3-year, $10.5 to $11 million deal. I'd start him even while he probably works his way back to the end of the rotation. He eats innings. Eventually, he becomes a really nice to have veteran bullpen arm when he gets pushed aside by younger kids, hopefully. I mean, I hope all that would happen in 3 years. And hey, that's up to him and the development team. But he fits like a Swiss Army knife. And 3 years just feels right to me for that reason. 4.29 ERA in 149 innings pitched this year with a 1.215 whip. And I will admit, this season was above his depth. This is better than he has looked. I think he's going to get rewarded for that in free agency, and I would not be afraid to be on that if I were the Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, I have him as one of mine. So
there you go. So we're only going to have 4 guys here. We're going to talk about.
I don't know. Sorry, the show's over. I look at him, and you're talking about a guy who survived pitching in Cincinnati for 7 years, and made it through that pretty unscathed. I think what you're looking for is like lower risk guys that are still in an age where you can feel comfortable giving them, a 3-4 year deal if you need to. And I think he fits right into that. Also, and I'm not serious here, but maybe kind of, he'll have the best outfield arm on the team. So we can put him in the outfield and let him play defensive late innings. I'm kidding, kind of. But Henry Davis obviously has a good arm. But no, I think he's somebody that you could target, and he does have some versatility, and he's still someone that can middle of the rotation type guy. He's still that. So I like
All right,
I like
so we
him
could
a
both
lot.
swallow Michael Lorenzen. I mean, to me, he's the lesser of my signings. He's the Vince Velasquez I'm thinking of. Like, he's the starter, but if he doesn't wind up being a starter, I still think it's a good signing because I think it bolsters the bullpen and gives a little bit more depth there as well. So
yeah,
I like having a slide guy one way or another. It doesn't have to be Michael Lorenzen. Be happy to listen to other names if other people want to throw things in. I saw Jose Quintana, somebody mentioned. Sure, I'd be fine with that as well. Probably not for 3 years, I wouldn't, but a year or so, I think would be kind of cool. I'd like it to be more of a permanent solution, though, something that's actually going to stick around and help for a while.
Yeah, like that's what I would be looking at is if you've noticed, we're talking about 2 or 3 year deals, 3 or 4 year deals, something to help just stabilize these positions that you're not gonna regret 2 or 3 and 4 year deals with the guys we're talking about unless something really bad happens, like health wise. And so we're trying to stay in that reasonable box that we know we have to deal with the Pirates. That's what I'm trying to do at least. So
maybe we'll see what my last one is. What do you got to go there? What's your next one?
Okay, so maybe this is where we'll differ, but I do know that we both want pitching. So I think we'll both be in the pitching category, but maybe the name will be different. So this is the guy that I think I would like to have, but I do think he's going to command some decent money. And that guy is Jordan Montgomery.
Yeah, that's a great get, man. I personally thought he was going to probably be too expensive, so I left him off my list, but I think he's probably my choice if I were to go out and pick a lefty I really, really wanted.
Yeah, because he's not a one. I don't know where you can put him somewhere in the middle. Maybe a 2,
I don't care about all
3.
that.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just trying to give people an idea of like where you might be. What
he
what
probably
kind of,
walks into this team as a 2.
yeah, super durable. He eats innings. He's not ultra reliant on a big fastball, even though he's a big lefty. He doesn't rely on that. So if you're trying to get guys that you might feel like, well, what if he starts losing some of his velocity? Well, he doesn't live off of that. So I kind of see him as like a big lefty John Lieber type guy who can eat a lot of innings for you and be super important to stabilizing a rotation. But I think he's going to get a lot of action this offseason, but not in a stratosphere where you couldn't do it if you really wanted to.
You think he gets over 20?
No.
No?
I don't.
I think he touches 17, 18 at least per probably. Lefties they always get a little bit more, it feels. And I just think that that's one commodity that isn't super wide open. There's a lot of free agent starting pitching. There's not a lot of quality lefty starting pitching that's going to go anywhere. Like right. Kershaw's not going to go anywhere. You know what I mean? Chris Sale, I'm not sure you'd want him to go anywhere except for maybe the retirement list. But Paxton is a guy that you could look at, but it's kind of tough. I think he's a 17, $18 million guy though. So
yeah, he's like I said, he was on top of my sexy list.
No, I like it, and this team shouldn't really be able to BS their way out of it. They're gonna have, like, by the time they're all done with ARB and everything, their payroll's probably gonna be, their commitments are probably gonna be sitting somewhere in the 40s, and they spent like 35 million-ish on acquisitions last year. I don't think there's any reason to expect that they shouldn't spend some money. You know what I mean? I think it's fair to expect them to get into the 80, 90, 100 territory this year. I think that's doable and acceptable. And again, they're the ones that said they wanted to make the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. This is based off of them saying that's the expectation or the goal now.
All we're doing is saying what we think needs to be done to make sure that happens, as opposed to see what needs to be done to sit back and hope it happens.
Yeah.
Because I can sit back and hope that a whole bunch of kids get better next year. But I'd rather know that I've brought in enough that I don't need them to.
Right.
So.
And also another point about Montgomery is he's 31. So again, you're hoping to commit that money to a guy that should still be very effective because of how he pitches for the next 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. If it takes 5 years to do it, I mean, let's be honest. Some of these guys that they might pull in, will they even see the back end of those contracts here? Probably not. So
Yeah, I mean, they might not. Depends on how they structure them. I'd say Ben Charrington's been extra anal about the way he structures the deals that he has done thus far. Anything that he's signed beyond a year or so has been tapered, so that at least seems to be a strategy he likes to employ. My last one here, Jim, would be Yoshi Yamamoto, the Japanese all-star that is rumored to be um, jumping to Major League Baseball. Pirates are involved, so are a whole bunch of other teams. This is still relatively close to a pipe dream, but I think for a team like the Pirates, this is a great way to get value. You pay that one-time posting fee. They tend to take a little bit of a lesser contract for their entry into the league. I think it's a good opportunity to catch lightning in a bottle with a fairly proven out talent. And I think he could slot right into your rotation pretty quickly. So that would be my third one.
Fill me in on him, because I didn't include him simply because of the unknown factor there. So tell me a little bit about him if you've got some stuff up.
I mean, I don't the stats I don't like to call on because it's Japan. So when you start reading them off, it kind of sounds like, the reincarnation of Satchel Paige or something.
Right.
That's not really fair. All I know is he's seen by scouts to be up amongst like Hideo Nomo type talent.
Okay.
And that sort of thing gets thrown around rarely, like when Jung Ho Gong was being pursued by the Pirates. I heard about it, but I didn't hear about it like in so much as 10 or 11 teams were looking at him. There were 3 or 4 teams looking at him. When half the league is in on a guy and sending scouts to Japan to watch him have his second no-hitter.
Yeah.
It tends to excite people a little bit. I've seen video on him. I'm not an expert, but I just know when that many scouts say that they like a guy, to me, it's worth taking a shot at. Now, it could turn out like, terribly, or it could turn out great, but it's worth a shot. And it's usually a pretty low risk. Somewhere in like the 12 to $15 million range, I'm talking.
Okay.
After the posting fee. And you got a shot. You either get like a frontline starter or maybe a back end starter. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work out. It's a risk, but I think it's a risk that a team like this has to take.
Yeah, I think that's the thing we're both trying to do here is minimize some risk with the guys you're going after, because we've talked about this time and time again. There's what teams spend in payroll per year, and then there's what teams spend on their mistakes and what they just throw in the trash and don't worry about. Well, the Pirates can't do that. They shouldn't do that. And so they've got to be a little bit more careful if they do commit any money. And that's the big thing.
Ryan rightly points out they need to extend Keller. He's right. That shouldn't affect what they can get done this offseason either. When they sign these contracts, they're not stupid. They don't give them $20 million the first year. They'll keep it low, or they'll maybe they'll go ahead and reward him early so that it can be low next year. They'll do something along those lines so that they kind of maneuver the payroll about. Like, I think Hayes actually gets a pay decrease next year. So, I mean, it's playing games, but like, I don't think it should matter. They should get that done. If they don't get the Keller signing done, they're in a lot of trouble. And backing up my Japanese pitcher here, Canyon says Senga was great get for the Mets. And he was. But that took a while too. Actually, that wasn't like an instant gratification thing, which in some ways I think is the greatest argument against going and trying to do something like this, because Japanese players do tend to take a second to adjust to this league. So it's not always like exactly what you'd hope for. Sometimes takes them a minute to actually be effective. They may ultimately get there, but can the Pirates afford that and get to the wild card? I
Right.
personally think they can, but
Yeah, that's the thing. You're looking for guys that can come in and immediately stabilize things. At least
Mhm.
I am. Like, I don't want, if that's a concern, maybe that is something that I would be a little bit more leery of. I'm glad both of us stayed away from the Giolitos of the world. Um, I know you've mentioned Flaherty before, but I look, he's very good when he's healthy. I don't know how much you want to commit to a guy like that who's had some shoulder issues. So I'm glad we stayed away from those guys. I think the short list we came up with was pretty decent.
I think we limited ourselves to 3 here.
Mhm.
That was partially because we wanted to keep it a slightly punchy episode here, but
Right.
also I think we wanted to leave it 3 because I think 3 would be enough, and I think they'll do more than that. You know what I mean? I think 3 decent signings would be enough, and I actually think they should do a little more than that. And you can say that you want to try to make the playoffs, but I don't think anybody wants to squeak into the playoffs.
No.
You want to get in and feel like you belong. So, you aim high. You aim higher than you need to. And I don't think there's much of a cavalry coming next year. There's players that I think can help.
You're
There's play-
talking internally.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like not like this year anyway, where there was just a litany of guys they could really try. You're going to have some of that next year. Like you're going to have like Jared Jones is going to make a push next year. He is. Quinn Priester is probably going to make another push next year. Rowanzi Contreras is out of options. So
Yeah.
that he's going to have he almost has to make the team in some capacity next year out of spring, doesn't he?
Yeah. That's getting to be a little dicey.
Right. Ortiz is going to make a push next year. Skeens is going to make a push next year. Termar might make a push towards the back end of next year. Gonzalez should make a push. But I don't think it's going to be anything like it was this year, where it was, nearly every other week they were calling somebody up, it felt like.
Right. And the guys you just mentioned that might do it next year, that's not good enough. We don't know that stuff. We can't depend on it. And that's that shift in mindset we're talking about, where you can't just sit around and hope for that. You can't do it. You've already said what you just said. So
I want like Paul Skeens to push aside Michael Lorenzen, or I want him to make it look foolish that you're still toying around with Quinn Priester. Call up Paul Skeens. He's ready. You know what I mean?
right.
Now, I'm not saying that to denigrate Priester. He could wind up, taking a spot and being fine. But, Solometo got brought up here by Canyon as well. Obviously, all those guys have a chance. I feel like we're saying the same thing just about every week. It's not that we're saying that we're done thinking we need any help from the minor leagues. We will. You just want to make it a little harder now for them to get here. You want to quit feeling like the development system is failing. You need to stop needing these kids as badly as they do when they need them. You need to be bringing up more polished candidates. So age of rookies debuting is probably going to go up in certain areas, and the odd phenom is going to sneak through. That's going to be your younger guys. But
The reality is you have to give yourself some leeway. You have to, like, and you're trying to, like, I've used this analogy before. You're trying to land a Boeing aircraft on a runway this big, and you have to give yourself a bigger runway. And I think that that's kind of what we're talking about right now, is that you can't be totally reliant on, yeah, Solometo could be very good. So
I hope
could
he is.
Jones. Yeah. But we just went through this with Ortiz and Roanzi and Burrows getting hurt. And
It's my dream to wake up one day and as a Pirates fan and go, "Oh my God, I wish they hadn't wasted all that money on Michael Lorenzen."
right.
Because we can't get a spot for Quinn Priester to pitch.
Yeah.
I
Who, by
mean,
the way, Michael Lorenzen was a guy they probably should have went after last year.
yeah,
And Detroit got him, was able to flip him, sign him to a very reasonable deal. That's exactly what we were talking about with a guy like that, being forward thinking, and maybe you wouldn't be in the position that he's even on the list that we have to talk about. So that was that's frustrating too.
and while I think Brandon Belt is a better choice, I still wouldn't hate Carlos Santana. I just don't think that you can ever bring in a Carlos Santana and go, okay, this is my solution this year and next year. That's never going to be on the table. It's always going to be year to year with him. In fact, it's really probably month to month if you
Yeah.
really think about it. And I just think Brandon Belt leaves more room for bringing someone along slowly with him. And if Triolo can add more power, he really does become a guy that I think could benefit from that platooning there and get more comfortable and maybe eventually wrestle some more playing time away from him. And you almost let it happen naturally that way. It's just something that I think the Pirates have neglected for a really long time. I'd really like to see them invest in it, call the situation solved for a couple years, and let things develop a little bit there.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, you got a guy.
Rhys Hoskins would be fine with me too, but I still think there's a little bit of a bet there that he's going to be okay.
Right, and he's not a good first baseman, and you're depending on Rhys Hoskins to hit home runs. That's such a key component to his value. For me, I would love to see them get a Brandon Belt, give Connor Joe some starts over there. I think offensively, you can cobble enough together there to have a pretty productive first base. And if you want to sprinkle in the occasional Triolo start or something like that, and to me, Carlos Santana is just, he's last resort for me. He's just a last resort.
I got to hand it to him, man. I mean, because he went full bore for us pretty much all year. We talked early and often about how he was sacrificing his body all over the place, and he has not slowed down in Milwaukee. He's hitting home runs still and running around. I don't think he's playing quite a sharp defense for them, at least not from the games I've watched Milwaukee play. But I wouldn't hate it for 1 year. I just would, again, I think it's time for us to stop settling for that. It's time for us to try to at least patch holes a little bit longer. Let's stop pulling our finger out of one hole in the canoe and putting it in another. Like it's time to fill something up and like leave it go and let something develop behind it. Maybe Nunez is your answer. He's 22 years old. Give him time to develop then properly. Move a prospect like Nick Gonzalez over there. Move Kanan Smith and Jigna there. Whatever. Let it develop for a couple years, and then maybe you'll have a solution when you're ready. It's not forced that way. or
Right.
Brandon Belt's injury history is probably going to give opportunity.
Yeah, I think right now he's dealing with his back.
Yeah.
So, but there's a veteranosity there with him, winning and
Yeah.
being on winning teams. I think that could be a really good addition, and getting younger at the position with someone who's still got a little bit more juice left than Santana, who, how much longer can you expect even what he's doing now? Eventually there's going to be a drop off.
I mean, do we need Santana though? Because Palacios is clearly our cleanup hitter next year.
Oh my goodness. Hey, I'll give Palacios a lot of credit, Gary, because I totally dismissed him at the beginning. And
dude, we both thought Connor Joe was going to get cut in spring training.
Yeah.
So, I literally last night I'm watching this game. I'm on Facebook, and the comments are going haywire about why isn't Andujar in there? And why aren't we seeing? We should be seeing Andujar every game. And I just, what aren't you seeing here? There is no plan for him.
But Gary, he's an RBI machine. Greg Brown
There's
told me.
just no plan for him. And I think we talk about like the decisions that the Pirates have to make here. I talked about Roansy Contreras. Bailey Falter is another guy they just got that has no options. I don't see any path for him to make the rotation next year. Not out of spring, anyway. And I'm not sure I see him in the bullpen either. I guess I could. But they've got some tough choices to make that are going to test that depth too. So there's a lot of these guys we have lined up as possibilities that I'm not 100% convinced are going to be here. So
yeah. They got some decisions to make, and hopefully they're tougher. And I think
bottom line is, I think you and I like directness, right? They were direct. They directly said that next year they're going to target being in the playoffs. That takes the mystery away, right? I mean, next year, what that does, just for those of you that are too jaded to even think about it, what that does is it says, hey, if we don't make the playoffs, this was not our goal. So they can't just reach 500 and miss the playoffs and go, well, this was reasonable progress. Nope. You officially failed from the time you said that was your target. Should be every year. We know that. But when you're coming out of a rebuild, there are logical steps. It's good to hear them say it. I give them credit for that, actually, Jim.
Well, hey, if nothing else, maybe Ben Cherington is at the point where he's going to put a little pressure on things too, right? From upstairs to say, okay, remember that conversation we had, Bobby, way back? Well, I'm now saying that because that it's time.
Yeah, and I actually think this offseason, I took that as a great sign that they were going to be willing to spend at one point. I think that was a pretty decent investment on a team that they knew wasn't going to go to the playoffs this year. Yeah, they wanted to improve and everything, but I think that was a pretty reasonable investment to kind of slow things down, buy some time for these prospects, try to hold them back a little bit, right? I think they did a good job with that, and it makes me hopeful that this upcoming offseason, if that's what they were willing to do then, to me, I feel like, okay, they're at least going to be willing to do that. Add on another 10, 20. I think you're right where you need to be, at least as far as that first goal of making the playoffs. I'm not saying that's a World Series team.
Right, and I think everybody needs to keep in mind here is you've got to look in the division as well.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see every team, the Brewers, I don't know. But I think you're going to see every other team take a step forward, an additional one. So the Cardinals will because they'll add, and they were awful. The Cubs and Reds, I still think they're going to take steps forward, and I think they'll spend a little money to do it. So you better be prepared to keep up with the Joneses in your division a little bit.
Hey, good stuff, Jim. This was fun. I love talking through some of this stuff, and I love that it's not as theoretical as it used to be. I actually do think
Nor
there's a
should it
little
be.
bit of realism to it now. So,
Right.
but that's what it should be. We should be able to have fun conversations about this stuff and talk about it because it is just sports. I was like taken aback to read that somebody actually died in a sports stadium this week. We've got to chill, people. Not everything is the end of the world. It's Matt Canada sucks. Okay, so your football team's offense blows. Like, this team has no pitching right now. Okay. You don't have to like threaten to bomb a building. Like, you don't have to want to punch somebody because they got a prospect that you wanted. Like, just calm down. Or you have a difference of opinion about a player. Relax. It's sports.
I mean, like,
We're supposed to have differences of opinion. It's boring when you don't.
just have some perspective. That's all I ask people to do is like, yeah, is it super frustrating to sit and watch the Pirates sometimes? Absolutely. Should it really affect your life one way or the other? Absolutely not. And yeah, we want the Steelers to look better, and we want the Penguins to be back in the playoffs, and we want Pitt to be able to get a first down on offense. But
Yeah.
now check in with me on this Saturday and Sunday and see if I'm this sane. But yeah, man, let's just keep it all in the right perspective.
Yeah, man, it's going to be fun. And you're right. Somebody said very early on here, I think it was Ryan Little, that competitive baseball in September and being interested in it in September is a win. I'll take that too. So, good stuff. Jim, we should finish the show. We always do. We'll toss it over to our buddy Ben, and for everybody watching on video, I will say thank you for tuning in, and let's go Bucks.